Well, the UNFCCC is, I think, deliberately confusing. It is at once a treaty that was signed in 1992 by George H.W. Bush on behalf of the United States. Eventually, it was ratified supposedly by the U.S. Senate. And it's also the name of the bureaucracy that manages this so-called climate process that every year has what they call the Conference of the Parties. These are the parties to that 1992 treaty. This was the 30th annual so-called Conference of the Parties that just took place in Belém. And ostensibly, the purpose of this UNFCCC is to combat the alleged climate crisis. It used to be, global warming. This was shortly after we came out of the global cooling fake scare. Now it's just regular climate change. And what they did in Brazil this year was not as dramatic as what we've seen in many of the previous conferences. And I think that's largely attributable to the fact that Donald Trump is the president. In September, he actually told the UN leaders to their faces that this was the biggest con job in the history of humanity, and that it needed to stop. During the climate conference, he was actually giving a speech to some Arabs, and he said, I think there's a conspiracy promoting this climate fraud, and they ought to be investigated. And then he says, maybe they are being investigated, very cryptically. So, I'm sure there were some big gulps had at the COP30 as they heard that maybe there's some possible fraud investigations, conspiracy investigations into the people promoting this gigantic fraud that, as Trump pointed out way back in 2012, is clearly designed to undermine the United States and build up our mortal enemy, the Chinese Communist Party, mass murdering dictatorship there.